Deep inside the heart of Atlanta, protected by a steel vault, biometric scanners, and a 24-hour armed guard detail, lies a secret that is arguably worth more than the gold in Fort Knox. But what if the greatest trick the Coca-Cola Company ever pulled wasn't keeping a recipe hidden, but using that very mystery to bury a history far darker than a simple list of ingredients? We are told the story of a harmless soda, a symbol of American joy. Yet the path to global dominance is paved with shadow deals, suppressed inventions, and a calculated erasure of the truth. This is the history they don't want you to find in the vault. This is the cost of the world's most famous sugar water. Most people believe the legend of the bumbling pharmacist John Pemberton creating a miracle tonic in a brass kettle. But the real story begins with a man broken by war and enslaved by a morphine addiction. Pemberton wasn't looking for a refreshing beverage. He was looking for a way to survive the crushing agony of his own nerves. His original French wine Coca was a literal drug, a chemical cocktail designed to numb the pain of a generation. When Prohibition forced the alcohol out, the secret remained: cocaine. For decades, the company has downplayed this. Yet the very foundation of their empire was built on a stimulant that fueled the workforce of the industrial South. But the true secret history isn't just in the chemistry. It's in the cold-blooded corporate takeover that followed. As Pemberton lay on his deathbed, his invention was systematically stripped from him by Asa Candler, a man who realized that the recipe was worthless without the myth. Candler didn't just buy a business. He bought the right to rewrite history, slowly pushing the dying, addicted inventor out of the frame, until the Coca-Cola we know today was born as a wholesome family drink. But as the brand grew, so did the necessity to control every narrative that touched it. Have you ever wondered how Coca-Cola became the undisputed king of the world during World War II? It wasn't just through clever marketing. While American soldiers were being shipped overseas, Coca-Cola's leadership struck a deal with the Department of War that would make any modern lobbyist blush. They convinced the government that their soda was an, quote, essential wartime commodity. Quote, this meant that while the rest of the world was suffering through sugar rations and supply shortages, Coca-Cola was being shipped to the front lines on the taxpayers' dime. They built 64 bottling plants across Europe and the Pacific under military protection. By the time the war ended, they hadn't just won the hearts of the soldiers. They had used the United States military to build a global infrastructure that no competitor could ever hope to match. They were the only brand that emerged from the rubble of the 1940s with a factory in almost every corner of the map. But this expansion came with a heavy price that the history books conveniently omit. In the shadow of this global footprint, the company faced accusations that would haunt them for decades. In the 1930s and 40s, as the world polarized, Coca-Cola wasn't just an American icon. It was a master of playing both sides. In Germany, the company's subsidiary was flourishing under the Third Reich. When the war made it impossible to ship the secret syrup from the US to Germany, the local managers didn't stop production. Instead, they invented a new drink using the leftovers of the food industry, whey and apple pomace. They called it Fanta. For years, this German branch operated under the most brutal regime in history. And when the war ended, the parent company simply reabsorbed the profits and the new brand, as if nothing had happened. This is the corporate survivalism that the vault protects. The ability to adapt to any moral landscape as long as the distribution lines keep moving. The modern era of the vault is even more complex. As we moved into the late 20th century, the secret history shifted from wartime maneuvers to environmental and human rights battles that the company spent billions to suppress. In India, during the early 2000s, entire farming communities found their wells running dry and their soil contaminated. The culprit? Local Coca-Cola bottling plants were accused of extracting millions of liters of groundwater, leaving the people who lived there with nothing but toxic sludge. The company's response was a masterclass in PR denial, legal delay, and eventually a massive rebranding campaign focused on sustainability. Quote, "They didn't just want to sell soda. They wanted to control the very conversation about the world's most precious resource, water." The vault isn't just protecting a formula. It's protecting the strategy of how to own a resource that everyone needs while convincing them you're doing them a favor. In South America, the history becomes even darker. Allegations surfaced of paramilitary groups being used to intimidate union leaders at bottling plants. While the company denied direct involvement, the pattern of silence and the refusal to take accountability for the actions of their subsidiaries became a hallmark of their secret operations. They realized early on that by using a system of independent bottlers, they could enjoy the profits while maintaining a layer of plausible deniability for any unfortunate events on the ground. This is the genius of the Coca Cola machine. It is a decentralized empire where the head never has to answer for the hands. Then there is the mystery of New Coke in 1985. The public remembers it as a massive failure, a corporate blunder of epic proportions. But look closer at the timing. At the height of the Pepsi challenge, Coca-Cola replaced its beloved original formula with a sweeter version that everyone hated. The backlash was immediate and fierce. When they brought back Coca-Cola Classic months later, sales skyrocketed to levels never seen before. Conspiracy theorists and business analysts alike have long whispered that New Coke wasn't a mistake at all. It was a calculated, new history move. By taking away the original and bringing it back, they revitalized a stagnant brand and, more importantly, some believe it allowed them to quietly tweak the formula, moving away from expensive cane sugar to cheaper high-fructose corn syrup, without the public noticing the change in the chaos of the return. They used a fake crisis to reset their profit margins. This is how the vault works. It's a distraction. While we are all looking at the high-security door in Atlanta, wondering if there's a piece of paper inside with cinnamon and vanilla written on it, the real secrets are out in the open. The real secrets are the lobbying efforts that fight sugar taxes in developing nations, the massive plastic footprint that clogs our oceans, and the psychological warfare of a marketing department that has successfully linked a sugary syrup to the very concept of, quote, happiness. The vault is a symbol of the ultimate corporate religion. It teaches us that the mystery is more important than the truth. They want you to think the secret history is about a flavor, because if you start looking at the history of their power, you might realize that Coca-Cola isn't just a beverage company. It is a sovereign entity that has survived world wars, toppled local water tables, and successfully lobbied its way into every household on Earth. They have spent over a century perfecting the art of the business vault, burying the morphine-addicted origins, the wartime opportunism, and the environmental costs under a mountain of red and white nostalgia. Every time you see that iconic script, you are seeing a masterpiece of historical editing. They didn't just invent a drink. They invented a way to make the world forget everything that went into making it. The steel door in Atlanta doesn't just keep the world out, it keeps the past in. As the company moves into the future, venturing into coffee, alcohol, and data-driven vending, the vault will only grow more fortified. Because in the information age, the most dangerous thing to a multi-billion-dollar brand isn't a competitor. It's the truth about how they got to the top. The vault remains closed, the guards remain armed, and the secret history remains buried, hidden in plain sight behind a wall of bubbles and a smile. The hook has been set for over 100 years, and as long as we keep looking at the vault, we will never see the shadows it casts across the globe. This is the dark history of the world's most successful secret, a story of power that is far more intoxicating than the drink itself. They want you to remember the polar bears and the Christmas trucks. They need you to forget the morphine, the monopolies, and the dry wells. Because once the vault of history is truly opened, the image of the real thing might never look the same again. It's not just soda in that glass. It's a century of secrets, bottled, chilled, and sold back to us, one sip at a time.